Hey guys, welcome back to my another video on the Monstack series. I believe this is the episode 7. On this episode, we will be integrating all of our to-do related endpoints with our UI. So without further ado, let's get started on today's video. So this is the progress that we have so far. So we managed to authenticate the user and set up various routes within our UI on our last episode. So now let's start integrating our backend routes for to-dos with our UI. So we're gonna start by making some changes on dashboard, and we just need to make a simple change here. So that because right now what's happening is even though the user is not logged in, we are still showing the dashboard. It doesn't make sense at all because if there is no user, then there's no to-dos to render. So we're gonna fix that. So in order to fix that, I'm gonna have to import a use effect hook, and I also need a use selector to get the user info. And just say import use selector from React Redux. And here what I need to do is I need to use the use selector to grab the user from my store. I can just destructure it equals to use selector. As you know, it takes a callback function, not the callback function, it takes the function as argument called state, and we're going to grab our state.user from it. Alright, now the only thing that we need to do, we need one more hook actually. We will need to bring use navigate too, so that every time if there is not a user, then we will send the user to login page. Right, use navigate. Let's initialize that navigate. Let's navigate equals to use navigate, and let's write a use effect hook. It takes function, and for the second argument it takes dependencies. We're gonna fill that dependency in a second. Over here all we need to do is we will check if there is a user or not. If there is not a user, then we can just simply do navigate to /login, and we will need to provide a dependency. Since we're relying on user and navigate, we will need to add those as a dependency here, and also navigate. Alright, now user won't be able to go to dashboard at all if user is not logged in. Alright, that's pretty cool. So if I log in with Foo's email, if I submit, yeah, user will be able to navigate because we are logged in. Alright, that's will be the small fix here. Now we're gonna move into setting up the Redux store first, for at least for getting the to-dos and adding the to-dos, and then we're gonna move on to HTML portion. So let's close this logins and header. I think we can close this user slice too, auth service, but we do need store. So let's start by creating a folder on our features so that we can start creating a slice. So the reason to create a separate slice is on the last episode we created the slice for our authentication, right? Now we need to create a slice for our to-dos. So I'm just going to create a folder called to-do, and within that folder I'm going to have to create a file called to-do slice.js. Here I'm going to put all of my to-do related Redux actions and reducers. Now the thing that we need to do first is let's I think we can start creating, and then we're gonna, once we create a basic setup for our to-do slice, then we can bring that back in the store, because right now we only have user reducer over here. Right, let's open the dev tool right here. We only have user. Alright, let's start writing the to-do slice. So I'm gonna import create slice and create async thunk from, you're going to come from Redux Toolkit, and then we can initialize the initial state later on. Let's create a slice. So as you remember from our last episode, the way to create a slice is what you need to do is you will do something like export const TODO slice equals to, we're going to create that create slice function that we imported. Over here you can pass an object, and you're gonna have to provide the name. I'm gonna name it as TODO, and you need to provide an initial state. It's gonna error out because we don't have an initial state, so let's go ahead and create that one. So for our initial state, it's gonna be an object. We're gonna have a field called TODO, which is gonna be an array, and we're gonna have a state of is loading that will be false, is success, that's gonna be false as well. It's basically the same as how we did on the user. The only difference would be the actual data, which is TODO in this case instead of user. So it's loading, it's success, and is error is false, and message, which is the error message, that is empty string. So now it should not error out. Alright, now once we add our initial state, we can add the reducers. We can do reducers, and inside the object I can provide various reducers. And keep in mind, as I guess I explained on my last video too, these are not asynchronous reducers, they are just the regular reducers, and we're only going to have one reducer which is not going to be asynchronous, that is going to be reset, and it takes a function. All it does is it reverts our changes back to initial state. That's it. The reason we didn't do this way on our user slice is because we want to have some sort of persistent of the user within the store. That's why we manually set the default values. Right, now for our asynchronous reducers and action, we're gonna have to provide inside the property called extra reducers. For now, let's just keep it as a empty function. We're gonna deal with this later. Now I think everything should be ready in terms of our basic store setup. We're gonna export const. The way to export your regular reducers are, you're just gonna export it like this with the reset equals to name of the slice dot actions, and we would also need to export default TODO slice dot reducer. Alright, now that should be good enough, at least for now. Now we're going to go back to store, and we will have to bring that reducer here. I'm going to do import TODO reducer from, it's going to come from dot slash features slash TODO slice, and let's copy that, and I'm going to name it as TODO with the TODO reducer. Alright, now since once we add that to the reducer, if you open your dev tool for Redux, now you should see a new store for your TODOs with all of the default values that we provided right here. Alright, now we are done with our store. We can close that. Now we will be working on handling the asynchronous action. So let's start by handling the get TODOs, but for that to happen, what we also need to do is we're going to go to services. Since we had this all of the services related to user on the separate file, we're going to create a separate file for our to-dos too, and we're going to need the base URL on two different places. We can just like do it based on this, but what I like to do is I like to create a new folder called utils, and inside that I'm going to create a new file, index.js. All it's going to do is basically just this. I'm going to cut that, paste it right here. It's going to complain it's not defined, so we're going to fix that in a second. And I'll export this base URL as a named export. So I can close that one, and over here I can just bring that base URL. From dot slash, let's go to utils slash, we don't need to do index because React will automatically pick the exports from index.js. Or our auth service should be good. So the one more benefit of doing it this way is, let's say if we decide to deploy our backend application, our base URL is going to change at that time. If you have it on like many different places, not on one place, you're gonna have to go there and change individually. But once you do that, let's say if our backend gets deployed, then we can just simply change it on one place and it will take effect on all of the other places. Alright, now we can close this auth service as well. Now we're gonna create a file within our services called todo service.js. Right now, let's write a function to add the to-dos. So I'm going to import Axios from Axios, and I'm going to need to bring that base URL, base underscore, I think it's base underscore URL from slash utils. So that should be there. Now let's write a function called get to-dos equals to, it's going to be an asynchronous action, and for the argument, right, as you remember, so for our register and login routes, it was fine without the token, but if you remember, we do need to pass the token whenever we're trying to access any routes related to our to-dos. I'm sorry, I tried to set up the window for Postman. The different window was selected because we used to provide this bearer token, right? So we need to take care of that. So what we need to do here is we will need to take the token as a parameter to this function. So we definitely need token, and here what I need to do is let's deal with token part first. So I'm going to create a object called config, and within that config object I will provide a header property, because all of these tokens, right, on Postman, they are sent through headers, and there is a property called authorization, right? So in order to add a header, you need to do headers object, and within that header you can pass various things, like what are the things that you want to send. So let's say I want to pass the authorization field, authorization. And if you remember, this is a bearer token, even though over here we are just pasting the token. We selected the type of bearer token, so the format for that should be bearer space the token. So that should take care of all of the things that we need for header. Now, like we did on user service, we're just going to do const response to await we're going to use Axios, and the method is going to be get to get the to-dos. And here I'm going to pass the request URL as a first argument, and I'm going to use $sign to bring up that base URL over here. And now our route is going to be base URL / rest / to-dos. I would need slash over here. And the way to pass this header config is just copy that one and pass it as a second argument. And that should be good. Now I'm just going to return the response dot data from here. Alright, now in order to make a use on the different file, I'm going to create a simple object called const todo service equals to, here I'm going to say get to-dos. So now if I export this to-do service, service as default, I can access all of the objects within here. So that way I don't have to manually export all of those. Export default to-do service. Alright, now we should be good here as well. Let me minimize that postman. Right, we set up the config. We call the Axios get function, and we return the data. Now we can go back to our to-do slice, and here I'm going to have to import that to-do service just like that, and I'm going to write a function or asynchronous reducer to get the list of to-dos. Here I'm going to just add a simple comment saying get list of to-dos, as we did for our login and register. We're going to write a function with export const get to-dos equals to, we're going to use that create async thunk package that we brought at the top, and the first one is going to be the name. This is going to be to-dos / get to-dos. Second one is going to be a asynchronous function. If you remember from our last episode, whatever the data that you want to pass to that specific function, that goes as a first argument, and there is a thunk API that goes on the second argument. In order to get the list of to-dos, we don't need any sort of data. So in order to avoid getting anything, you can just use the regular underscore and press comma, and you can pass the regular second argument, which is going to be a thunk API. And this is going to be an error function. Let's get rid of that. Now, like our last episode, we're going to have a try catch block, and here on try block, we're going to have to return await. We're going to go to to-do service dot get to-dos, and now the problem here is how do we get this token? Because this service requires a token, right? Otherwise this route can't be accessed. But the good thing about the token is we already have a token within our Redux store, right? So which is inside the user, and there is a property field called token itself. So all we need to do is we need to grab this info before calling this function right here. So what is the cool thing about Redux Toolkit is this thunk API will help you to get any sort of state within your store. So that's what we will be using. I'm going to copy that. I'll paste the thunk API there, and I'm going to call a function called getState from thunk API. And here you can specify anything, any sort of property that you want to try to access. Right now I'm just interested in .user.token. So why did I do that? Okay, once we call the get state, we will reach on the high level of the store. So as soon as I do .user, it means that I am inside here. And there is another property called user. That's where this second user comes in. Once I go inside that, there is a property called token, and that's where I'm grabbing that JSON web token. Right, now on the cats block, it's going to be the same thing like we did on our last episode. I'm just going to simply copy that message and that return statement where the Thonk API says or reject with value with our message. Right, I think our get todos is ready. Now all we need to do is go to our extra reducers here, and then start adding various cases for our get todos function. So as on our last episode, this extra reducer takes the argument of a builder, and inside the function you need to call that builder dot add case. And for add case, let's start by fixing the pending state. I'm going to say get todos. That's the function that we are interested in. Dot pending, and it takes a state, and inside the function all we need to do is set up the isLoading state to true, and we're going to add another case. This is going to be get todos dot fulfilled. This is for the success case. I'm going to do state, and it will also have a action, and inside the function I'll set up the state dot isLoading to false, and state dot, so what do I want to set next? I think it's is success. Yeah, is success will be true. Oh, this shouldn't be comma, it should be semicolon. I thought I was adding something inside the object with this curly braces, that's why I got confused. And there is also a property called state.todo, right? And this is where we will add our todos to our store. So since we have an action, as soon as this request gets fulfilled, we will get our data on action.payload. So all we need to do is just do action.payload, and it will update our Redux store. And we also need to add a case for rejected. Add case, and it will be get todos dot rejected. It's going to take state, it's going to take action. The reason it's going to take action is we will send out some sort of message from our backend if something is going wrong. And for our rejected, our isLoading is going to be state dot isLoading is going to be false. State dot is error is going to be true, and state dot, there is a message property, we can just set it to action dot payload. Right, now our extra reducers for getting the todos should be good as well. Right, now what we can do now is, because I don't want to move on to HTML just now, let's set up the create todos too, and then we're going to move to HTML. Create todos. So we're going to do the same thing again. It's just the different function that we will be using. Let's see if we can copy this. Instead of get todos, I'm going to say create. So we are going to create the todos for this. But I think, hold on, are we even ready to create the todos? Let me think about it. Yeah, I think we should. Yeah, let's do that. Instead of create todos, I'm going to name it as add todos. and here to-do slash add to-dos, and here instead of empty argument, we will need the to-do data before like creating a to-do, right? So I'm just going to name it as to-do here. And within the to-do service, we're not going to call get to-dos, rather we're going to call add to-dos. And we're going to use the same Thunk API to get the token, because we do need token for our add to-dos. And all of the other things for the catch blocks will be same. Now let's go to to-do service and let's add a function. Let me copy the name of the function so that I don't mess up the function name. Alright, now on our to-do service, it's going to be a similar thing with a few things will be different here. I'm going to create a function called add to-dos. It's going to be an asynchronous function as well, but as an argument, it's going to take to-do and a token. Then here, let's go here. Over here, I'm going to create a config. Rather than creating new one, I'm just going to copy that. Alright, so our header for our token is ready. So if you remember, let's see if I can open a Postman again. And I don't know if I have it or not. Whenever we used to add the to-dos and post, we used to send a property called to-do and the value over there, right? They need to be in key value pairs. And if we don't send the property of to-dos, our backend can't process it, because we are specifically looking at request.body.todo. So we need to make sure like we send the data on that format. So I'm just going to create a new object called body data. And within that body data, I'm going to specify a key called to-do. And I'm going to bring this to-do right here and just paste it there. All right, let me minimize this. And once our header and the body data is ready, I'm gonna call this response. Let me copy this one too. Now for the response, we are using axios.get, but we need to use axios.post for create to-dos. Base URL is going to be same, and our other rest/to-dos is going to be same as well. Now before passing the header, we can pass the body data. And we can just return response.data. Now all we need to do here is get this add to-dos and add it inside the object so that we don't get issues while doing this. Okay, I forgot to add this, so this needs to be passed right here as a first argument. All right, let's add our cases for add to-dos. Let me copy a few things from here. All right, now get to-dos, get to-dos, get to-dos. So these are the things that we need to change. 1, 2, 3. These are going to be add to-dos. So our pending state is going to be fine, just fine. So that's the only change that we need. For our fulfilled case, loading is false, success is true. But for our state.todo, and if you remember, when we send the data for the post request, we only send one specific object. So based on what we have over here, what it's going to do, let's say if you had 10 to-dos in your store, it's just going to override with like your one to-do, and it's going to get rid of all of the to-dos that you have from the state. So what you need to do is, instead of rewriting the whole state on the Redux Toolkit, where you can use a property called push. So what this will do is, as soon as you add a new to-do and you get the same thing as a response, it will add this action.payload, which is going to be that object, and it will add it at the end of the to-do list. We're just using a raise push function. And if it is rejected, loading will be false, error will be true, and the message will be action.payload. I think that's it in terms of our to-do slices, at least for getting the to-dos and adding the to-dos. Now I think we can move on to our HTML portion. Before going that one, I'm gonna go to index.js file, and not this one. Here I'm gonna get rid of this react.strict mode. Every time we have this, it will run useEffect twice, even though it will have an empty dependency array for some reason. Let's go clear that. And now, okay, let's have a plan now. We're gonna have some sort of form to enter the to-dos, and we will create a new component to render all of our list of to-dos. So what we can do now is we can start. So I have prepared, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna get the styles from our register component. So I'm gonna let me bring that just like that. These are gonna be the style components that we created for our register. Yeah, let's start writing this JSX, and then we can worry about whatever we need to. I'm gonna change this to empty fragment on our dashboard. I'm gonna call that style container. Within that style container, I'm gonna have a style form header. Within that style form header, I'm gonna have to bring dashboard icon, and I will need to bring that from my material UI import dashboard icon from what is the import. So it's gonna come from at my icons material / dashboard icon. Did I name it right? I think it's just dashboard. Yep. Okay, are we doing something wrong? Let me restart the server. I don't know why it stopped compiling. Alright, now we added that icon. Okay, there's our icon. Now inside that icon, oh, you know what? I need an h1 tag here before even adding the icon, because I want to have a message saying something welcome message for the user. I would still need this icon. I'm gonna move this inside this h1 tag, and then as soon as the icon is rendered, I'm gonna use curly braces and use the string template. I'm gonna say welcome, and here I'm gonna have to get the user, and it's gonna, you can just do it user.name here. So that should give you the username. I don't know why it's not rendering at all. It's not automatically loading for me for some reason. The problem with this approach is just by extracting the name property out of it, what if the user is not there? Because this user is coming from the Redux store, right? And if somebody logs out, we're gonna see cannot read the property of undefined name. So what you need to do is you can just do add the question mark in front of them. dot operator, so that way it will only grab the name if there is a user. And after that s1 tag, I'm going to have a p tag saying start adding TODOs. Alright, now our form headers should be good. And right underneath our style form header, I'm gonna get the style form container, and inside that I'm gonna create a form, and it's gonna have a on submit prop to it, and we're gonna call it as handle submit. Let's create that one so that React does not freak out. Const handle submit. It's gonna take event, and for now we're just gonna do e.prevent default so that it does not refresh the browser. Right inside the form tag, I'm gonna bring the style input container, and inside that I'm gonna create an input field, and we're just gonna have one input field in this case. In order to enter the TODOs, the type is gonna be text, ID is gonna be TODO, name is gonna be TODO, value is gonna be TODO text. We don't have that yet, so let's go ahead and create one. So I'm gonna import use state from React back here. Const, oops, wrong brackets, set TODO text equals to use state, and it's gonna start with empty string. Yeah, my VS Code is running really slow today. I don't know why. Let's copy that TODO text. Okay, where we are. So we added the value of TODO text. Now we also need a property called placeholder. Placeholder. It will say something like start adding TODOs, or it's kind of redundant, right? We have the same thing on the header too, and within the placeholder text too. So let's change that one. Please add TODOs. It's a little bit different. It's not quite, like a lot of difference, but I think that should work. I'm gonna say onSys property, and to handle TODO change. We don't have that yet, so let's go ahead and create that function. We're gonna go here. I'm gonna say, oops, what did I name it? And then change. It's gonna take an event. We're not doing something anything fancy like we did on like a register and login form. Since we just have one field, all we need to do is to set TODO text and assign it to e.target.value, so that every time the user types in within the text field, we will add that in our local state. That's pretty much it. And we're not going to have any button within our form, because we add it inside the form, so the users should be good, users should know, like as soon as you add something and press enter, you should be able to add the TODOs. I didn't want it to complicate things. Alright, now I think we're in the point to start getting the list of our TODOs actually. Before even doing that, yeah, let's do that actually, because I want to make sure. So we're going to need a few things. We already have a use selector. We're going to have to bring use dispatch so that we can dispatch an action. So as soon as we land on this page, we need to call getTODOs function. All right, now So let's initialize our dispatch. Const dispatch, use dispatch. So that is good. And then we're gonna need a few things from our reducers. So let's bring those. Import. We're gonna have to bring get TODOs, and we also need reset, and we're gonna have to bring add TODOs as well. So how are we gonna get the list of TODOs now? So we need to get the list of TODOs as soon as the user refreshes, or like we come into this component. So over here we're doing, if there's not a user, then navigate to login phase. Now I think all we need to do here is just do dispatch and call that get TODOs function. Get TODOs, and it does not take any argument. Since we added this dispatch here, React is going to complain it's missing the dependency. Let's do that. Alright, now let's see if we made a call or not. Looks like we did. As you can see on the header, we called the our get TODOs function, and we got the response back with 2 TODOs items per foo. And if we go here and look at our state, there is a list of TODOs that we have. Now, the good thing about this is now we can make a use of this array. Now what I'm thinking is, let's since we're dealing with the like services, let's add a service, and let's dispatch an action to add the TODOs as well. So once both of those are done, we can create a new component to render these TODOs on the UI. Alright, now we will need to like add the TODOs right here. So I'm gonna add a comment, so if you guys want to check out the code, adding the TODOs. Okay, here what we need to do is, before even sending the data to, hold on, we're just dealing with the add TODOs, but I thought we were already dealing with the update TODOs, because update TODOs is going to be slightly different. So for add TODOs, I think it's fairly simple. So we're just going to come here and just dispatch an action. Do dispatch add TODOs, and as our argument we're gonna send out our TODO text. I think that should be it. And as soon as we dispatch an action, we need to clear out our text field too. So let's do that. Set TODO text, and we're gonna set it to empty string. Alrighty. Now let's see if we are able to add the TODOs or not. So this is foo's account. Who's TODO from UI. Let's do that. Alright, I'm gonna press enter. So if we did everything right, so as soon as we press enter, this should trigger this handle submit function, which should dispatch the add TODOs reducer, and that should take care of our API goal. So let's see. Alright, it made call. It also deleted the content from our text field. And if we look here, it was the post request, so it means that it worked. And as a response, we got the new object back with the foo's TODO from UI. Now if I go to store, now instead of 2 objects, now we have 3 objects. So this is the object that we just got from the endpoint itself. So now, which is pretty cool. So this way we won't have to trigger the re-render. So as soon as we push the data to the store, it's gonna show it instantly on the UI. Yep, I think we are in the point to start writing a component for our basically for rendering our list of our TODOs, because we are at that point. Now I'm just gonna I'm gonna use the use selector again. Let me destructure a few things. I'm gonna grab TODO, and I think for now we can just get a to-do, then we should be fine. This selector fix state, and inside the state I'm interested in state dot to do. All I'm doing here is when we do state dot to do, we fall into this code block, and inside that I'm grabbing this to do with by destructuring it, so I should get the array here. All right, now after the form, we're gonna have everything in the form container itself over here by list. So right after this, I'm gonna insert a curly braces here so that I can insert JavaScript in here. Since we have all of the items on our to-do array, so I'm just gonna call that to-do. So if there is a to-do, then use map property out of it, and I'm gonna call the individual items, and I'm gonna use the direct return, and I'll need to create a oops. You know what, let's comment this one out. Let's create a component first, because otherwise it's going to be, like complaining a lot. I'm going to go to components, create a new folder called to-do, and inside that to-do folder I'm going to create a file called todo.js. I'm going to use a snippet RAFCE. Alright, now that should be good enough. So I'm going to go back to dashboard again, and here I'm gonna bring that to-do from to-do. Let's copy that component, come back here, let me uncomment this, and we can render that to-do here. Right, as you can see, since we had 3 elements, it rendered that to-do 3 times. But we don't have our actual to-dos yet, but that's fine. We can easily fix that one. But at least our component is there. We're gonna pass a couple of props here. We're gonna have to, if we are using map, we're gonna have to use key, and key should be a unique field so that React knows. Let's say you had 3 items in the list, and let's say something got changed within that list, and now you have 4 items. If you don't provide the key, React will not know which item got changed. So it's for the performance reasons. But good thing for us is we have a unique IDs for each items, right? So I can just grab item dot underscore ID. That is going to be the unique key for us. And we're going to provide the prop call to do, and that's going to be item itself. Right now it's not going to do anything. The reason is, why it's rendering so many times? I don't know what was going on there. It rendered 6 times. All right, let's go to to-do, and let's start writing our HTML. While we start working on this one, I'm going to need to bring one package. So on your UI, you want to go to UI and do npm I moment. So this is a package that we will be using to parse our date so that we can show the created at field underneath our to-do list. All right, let's close that one. That will go on the background. And inside the to-dos directory, I'm going to need to create a file, new file, to-do dot, should be uppercase, styled.js, and I'm going to bring few styles like I did in the last video so that we can save some time. I'll close that one, and I'll bring those styles just like that. And since we are passing the few things, right, to do as a prop, we will need to bring that here so that we can start making a use on those on this HTML. You can just do here props and right underneath, like extract its data from props. But what I like to do is, instead of doing props, I like to destructure whatever it's coming from the props. Over here, since I'm expecting to do, I can just simply do to do. And what I also like to do is I like to provide the default values. Since this to do is going to be an object, I'm just providing the default value. So if some component does not pass this prop to do to this component, it will know, or at least if nothing is there, this is going to be the default value. All right, now what we're going to do is let's set up our HTML first. I'm going to change it to fragment, and here I'm going to bring that style TODO container. That's going to be the wrapper, and within that I'm going to bring style TODO action container, and I'm going to have a h1 tag, and that will just render todo.todo. That should be all of the name of our TODOs. Yep, as you can see, we are rendering our individual TODO items. And now, after this h1 tag, I'm going to have to render style action TODO. So here we will have a couple of buttons in order to edit and delete the TODOs. So for that to happen, I'm going to have to bring few things. So I'm going to have to bring these are going to be material UI imports. So I'm going to have to bring tooltip and icon button from material UI, and I will also need to bring edit icon and delete icon from material UI. Since we're going to be parsing the date fairly quickly, I'm going to bring that moment package that I installed earlier, so that we can parse the date. I think that should be it for now. So within the style action TODO, I'm going to have a tooltip component, just like that. It's coming from material UI, and in the tooltip component, what you can do is, let's say if you want to have some sort of tooltip on your any clickable elements, all you need to do is you just need to wrap those things with the tooltip component, and the text that you want to have on your tooltip is going to go on the title prop, and you can just do edit TODO. So this is for the edit icon, and I will bring that icon button, and I'm gonna wrap our button with the icon button, which is going to be edit icon. And in a new material UI, you can pass if you don't want to create a separate CSS and you just have simple scenes, you can just pass the SX prop inside the object. Now I'm specifying the color here, which is going to be 219 EBC. I think that's the color. Yep. Alright, now the reason to wrap this inside the icon button is that this icon button is going to be a clickable element. As you can see now, it has edit TODO tooltip too, so that is cool. As soon as I click it, it adds, different kind of click behavior. So that's why I always like to use icon button whenever I'm using icons, and if I want to make those icons as clickable elements. It's up to your, choice. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. But that's how I like to do it. All right, once that is done, I'm going to have a similar thing for our other icon, which is going to be a delete icon. But over here, it's going to say delete TODOs. And for the color, let me copy the color actually. It's going to be slightly red. And it's going to be a different icon, not the edit icon. Rather, it's going to be a delete icon. So that we have the trash icon right there. Yep, all of our icons and the tooltip are ready for its individual TODOs. Alright, now what else do we have? So we set up the icons. Okay, now we need to have the created at field, right? So right after this TODO action container, I'm going to have a p tag and use curly braces and string templates. I'm just going to say created at, and I'm going to use $. Now I will use the convert date function. So what this will do is basically use the moment package to convert the date for us. So I'm just going to call that function for now, convert date, and here I'm just going to pass todo dot created add date. And right now we don't have that function, but it's fine. We can just go here and do const convert date equals to, it will take date as a parameter, which we already passed when we called it, and basically it's going to return, it's going to use that moment package and pass that date in there, and we can specify various formats. I'm just going to specify the format of mmddYY. So it will oh, not data, it should be date. All right, there you go. Now it renders, you know, like it so it used to be like this. Oops, I don't know why I'm pinning those. Let's open that. There you go. So it cleans up a little bit. Now this it will change the date from this format to, you know, like basically, you know, like a readable format. So we should have all of our to-dos actually. Let's test it out. So now let's add to-dos. Adding to-do from UI again. As soon as you do that, you know, like it happens real time. And, it will add the to-dos on the list. Adding to-do again. There you go. There is our to-do again. Now let's focus on this delete and edit functionality. So before even doing that, I'm gonna let me think about it. Let's see if I'm missing anything here. I guess if we find, you know, like something that's missing, we'll deal with it later. But let me do the real git commit quick. Git add all, git commit, wrapped up, git to-dos and add to-dos. All right, now in order for delete and edit, delete is fairly simple. So let's start with that. And once the delete is done, we will take care of the get to-dos, not get update to-dos. So we're gonna go to to-do slice again. Now for the delete, I'm just gonna copy this create to-dos so that we can save some time. But this is gonna say delete, not to-dos. We are deleting individual to-do. And here, instead of add to-dos, I'm gonna say delete to-do. And it will take it won't take to-do, but if you remember, let me bring up the postman again. If I have that request, we will need to provide the ID as a request parameter. So that's what we will be using. So instead of to-do, I will just do ID. And here, let me copy that ID, put it right there. Token is going to be same, but here it's going to be say delete to-do. Oh, didn't I change this? So there's our add to-dos. There's our get to-dos. Okay. Instead of add to-dos, I'm going to say delete to-do. I thought I changed that one. Right, to-do service dot delete to-do. Now we need to go back to, I think that should be it here. It's the same thing. Now let's go to to-do service. Now let's create a function. Okay, go there. It's going to be async as well. It's going to have a ID and token. While we are here, let's add this on this object so that we don't forget. And for the delete to-dos, we're going to copy the same thing for the config, for the header. I don't think we need a body, So all we can do is copy the response from here. Go here. We can get rid of this body data. And here, instead of post, we're gonna have to do delete. But as you remember, we also need to pass the ID as a parameter. So we already have a slash over here. So now we can use the $sign again and just add the ID in there. So that way, whatever the ID is passed in onto this function, it will append at the end of the URL. All right, I think we're good on the services side too. Now, what we need to do is we're gonna go back to to-do slice again. Now we're gonna fix all of our extra reducers. For delete to-dos, let's do one thing. Let's copy these 3 cases. Go down here, paste it. Now, did I say delete to-dos or delete to-do? Delete to-do, okay. All right, now I'm gonna change this name, and this name. So it'll be delete to-do. Our pending state should be good. Our fulfilled state, we're gonna have a few changes that we need to do. Let me get rid of this. Our state.todo is going to be we're going to have to do the filter, because every time, as soon as we delete within the action.payload, or what we do is we send out the ID of the deleted to-do back, right? So we're going to use that ID to filter out the data within our Redux state of our to-dos, and so that it does not have that deleted to-do in there. Now what we can do is we're going to filter out on state.todo.filter, and it's going to take an item. And what we're doing here is I'm going to check if there is an item dot underscore ID, and only take those values whose ID does not match. I think it should be not equal to, which does not match with the ID of action.payload.id. All right, so here, what we are doing here is we are assigning state.todo value by filtering out, because before you, let's say before you delete this to-do is going to be on your state, right? Now once you delete, you don't need to have that on the state. You can simply take that to-do out. So the only thing that we can use it as a reference to get rid of that to-do is that ID. So what we're doing here is, this item is from the Redux store itself. So we're grabbing ID from individual elements. So let's say we are at first object and we grab the ID. And if that ID does not equal to whatever the ID is coming from the payload, then it means that that data should be there, because that item is not deleted yet. That's what we're doing over here. And I think that should be it, if I'm not wrong, for the delete to-dos. So I think we can make a use of this delete to-dos now. If we don't have if we didn't mess up anything, I think it should work properly. The reason to do that check over here regarding the ID is you can completely omit this state, but the hard truth is it's not gonna render really quickly on your UI, because once you do that, it will you will see as soon as you delete the to-do, it's just gonna go away from your UI, and which is really good user experience. So that way you don't have to keep fetching the data to get the updated list. I hope that makes sense. All right, so where do we have our delete to-do function? Where do we add it? So since we had this button right here, delete, so we can add an on-click handler on this one. All right, now on this icon button for delete, I'm just going to add a on-click property to it and create a function called handle delete to do. Right now it's gonna freak out because we don't have that yet. Let me create one. I'm gonna go here to const. Oh wow, I didn't copy that, huh? I didn't mean to get that one. I thought I copied this name. And that's our function body. Now we need to bring our reducer that we just created. I'm gonna import delete to-do from features. And do we have dispatch already imported here? I don't think so. So we're gonna have to use dispatch so that we can dispatch an action. Use dispatch from React Redux. Let's copy that and let's initialize the dispatch. Const dispatch equals to use dispatch. Alright, and now all we need to do here is come to this function and just dispatch an action. The action that we want to dispatch is delete to do, and as you know, this delete to do takes a ID as a param, right? So and the good thing about like passing the ID is we already have the a reference to ID because we have the whole to do object right here. So we can just take that prop and access. Let's use optional chaining here. Do to-do.id. So now as soon as we click this, let's see, now it's the moment of truth. Let's try to delete this last to-do here. Now if we click this, we made a call, we got the ID back. If you see here, the method was delete, so our delete functionality is working. And also what it's also doing is we're not doing any refresh or anything. I can just simply do delete and it will just go away from UI. And it's not like like we're just taking it out of the UI. If I refresh and get the list of to-dos, I will only get 2 to-dos because they are actually deleted. All right, now let's add some to-dos. The to-do for to-do. Yep, yeah, it works. Now we're done with delete too. Let me do the quick commit again. Add git commit. Is wrapped up. Oops. Wrapped up. Delete to. Right now, let's work on the update to do. So we could start with the component itself, but let's create all of our let's handle our slices part, then we can deal with component level logic. So we need to create a new reducer. Just to copy this code from the delete to dos. Let's copy that, and now it should be update to dos. Let's name it as update to do, and let's copy that. Instead of delete to do, it's gonna say update to do. And for the update to do too, we do need ID. So oh yeah, it's gonna be a tricky one for update one. We're just not it's not just that like we need ID. We also need the updated data, right, from the text field. So what we can do is we can just say it as updated data, and let's pass that one. I'll explain like what will this contain. So before dispatching this action, update to do action, we will create an object with the field of we will create an object with ID and the updated text, and that way we will parse that information on our service. Yeah, I'll show you in a second, on service, and once we go back to the component, it's going to be like crystal clear. Let's go here. I think updated data, and I think that should be it. Let's create our service. So we're going to go to to-do service again, and let's create a function. Let's update. Nope. Let's close that. Update to do equals to, it's going to be an async as well. It's going to say update let's do updated data, and it's gonna have token as well. Let me copy the name so that I don't forget to add it here. All right. We're gonna have the config here as well, so let's grab that config object. And first we need to grab the body data. Const body data equals to we're gonna have to pass the body data as todo as key, and as I mentioned, right, we're gonna have the data field for todo text. So we can just do updated data dot todo text. So depending upon how you name it, whenever you are updating this object on your todo component, which I will show you guys in a second, you can use that name if you don't like this way. I think now that should be good enough for our body data. Now let's copy this. And now instead of axios.delete, if you remember, this is the put request for our update. Now we don't have the ID, so what we need to do is we're going to have to grab the updated data and grab the update todo ID. Let's have it like that. And it's going to have a config, and before the config we're going to have to send the body data as well, and at the end we will just return the response.data. All right, I think that should take care of our update to do. Now let's go back to our old friend slice. So we're gonna have to add the case for our update to do's. Let me copy this from the delete. Right, let's come back here, paste it. Now instead of delete to do's, it's gonna say, I think from here, right here, 1 2 3, it's gonna say update to do. Our pending state is going to be same, and our only difference is going to be our fulfilled state. So we won't use this filter here. We will use slightly different syntax. Now we're going to use map. So what I'm going to do is, so every time we update the to-dos, right, we will get the whole new object of that updated to-do. And what we need to do is, as soon as we get that object for the updated one, we will use the like magic of our ID to check if that updated to-do is in the Redux store or not. Then if it is there, we're just simply gonna replace that single object, and we're not gonna touch anything at all. So in order to do that, we're gonna use the map function. I'm just gonna do state dot todo dot map. I will take the item, and I'm gonna use the arrow function. And inside here, what I'm doing is, if there is item dot underscore ID, so we are grabbing this item.id from Redux store, and we are checking it against action dot payload dot underscore ID. This action dot payload is coming from the service itself. So if we find a match, then we know for sure, all right, we need to make a change to that object. So if that is the case, then we can simply use the ternary operator to get the action dot payload, because this is the updated to-do that we want to add it to our store. And if that's not the case, then we can just simply return the item, what we have on the Redux store. All right, I think that should be do it. We're just mapping it. We are checking the item.id from the Redux store with whatever coming from the service itself. And if we find a match, then we use this object, which is action.payload, that is coming from the service. If that's not the case, then we will use the item from the Redux store. Right now, I think we're gonna go back to our to-do component here, right here. So we're gonna have to add a on-click handler for this, which is gonna be to edit the to-dos. Let's create a function called handle edit to do. Let's create that const handle edit to do equals to, let's just have a empty body for now. All right, so what we need to do is, so it's going to be a slightly challenging task to edit the to-do. The reason is we're trying to edit the to-do from to-do component, right? And in order to edit the to-do, we need to populate this text field, right? And that text field lies in our dashboard component. So how do we hook those two things together? So we're going to use some props magic to do that. And I'll show you in a second how do we do that. Let's go to dashboard. So in order to make it change, like every time we click the to-do, in order to use this text to populate within the text field, all we need to have on this to-do component is the setter function for this text field. So which is, if I go to dashboard again, that is set to do text. If we can have access to that setter, we can easily make changes to this text field no matter where we are. So let's start passing that function as a prop. You can pass anything as a prop. And right now we're passing the setter function, just like that. I'm going to pass set to do text as set to do text. So let me copy that, go back to to-dos. Here I'm going to destructure that. And if someone does not pass anything, the default values will be empty function. All right. Now, so on the handle edit to do change right here. So what we also need to do here is, so as soon as we have the access to this, we can simply call that function and just populate the text, right? So how do we populate the text? In order to populate the text, let's see. So we should have access to our to-dos, right? And to-dos dot, I think it's a name, or it's just the to-do itself. I think it's the to-dos, because we already have this access to this text, and that's what we need to populate on. So I think what we can do is just do to-do dot to-do. Right, I think that should populate the text for us. Now, if it worked properly, if I click on edit, now it will generate that to-do item for me, right there. So if I click the second one, it will add those text fields within our, within our parent component. So this is pretty cool. Now, also, what we also need to do is, since we are populating this edit, this text field on our dashboard, in order to update the change, we also need to have access to the ID of what is the thing, we're trying to update, because otherwise it's just going to create a new to-do, and which we don't want one. We just want to edit, whatever we have. And it's not a problem, a to-do component, because we already have an ID, right? Because we can grab the ID for each individual things, but we don't have access on this dashboard. So what we want to do is, we want to go to our dashboard again, and we're gonna have to create a state over there. So let me go to dashboard. Let's see, right here maybe. I'm going to create a piece of state called update to do ID, set update to do ID. It's going to start with empty string, and all it will do is keep track of whatever the thing we are trying to edit. Let me copy that, and we're going to pass that thing as a props as well to our to-do component, so that every time we click on edit button, we will call this function to update the ID. All right, now let's go back here. As soon as we click the handle edit button, after we populate the text field, let's bring that here first. And it's going to be a empty function as well for the default value. I'm just going to call this setter, and here I'm just going to pass item, not item, TODOs actually, TODO dot underscore ID. So every time if you click the edit button from here, it's going to send the update TODO ID. It's going to populate the update TODO ID for this particular, like this particular TODO. So that way we will have text and the ID to make a change. Now what we need to do is we will need to dispatch action. So but how do we dispatch action? Because we're gonna have to do some edit too, right? We're just not gonna send this data. So now as soon as we do edit right now, and as soon as you press enter, it's going to call this handle submit function, and it's going to call this add TODOs function, but we don't want that. What we need to do now is, as soon as we do the prevent default, we're going to do a simple if check. We're going to say update TODO ID, oops, should not equal to, update TODO ID is not equal to empty string, meaning we came here and we updated the ID from here. Then, and we're going to have AND operator, and if there is a TODO text, we need to check if we have something on the TODO or not as well. Oops. If that is the case, then we're going to run the if statement. And for the else part, we're gonna run this dispatch and set TODO text. Let me bring those up in the else statement. Right here, as I mentioned, I'm gonna create a update TODO update data equals to, it's going to be object, because we discussed, like we're going to create an object from there, and we will pass update TODO ID, and then we're going to pass TODO text from here, and then we're going to have to bring update TODO here, update TODO, copy that. As soon as that is done, we're going to have to dispatch an action and call update TODO, and we will pass that update data that we have. And once we dispatch an action, we also need to clear up the text field, so we will set the TODO text to empty. And we also need to update this TODO ID so that we don't keep, like we don't keep track of the ID again. So we need to reset our ID. Okay, where we go, right here. I think that should take care of everything. And we're just gonna set it to empty string. Now let's do a real quick check, because we are doing update TODO ID and TODO text, right? Let's make sure we are parsing the correct data. Upon the updated data, TODO text. Let me just copy paste this just to make sure we don't mess up anything, because if we mess up what we are grabbing, it's gonna create problems, and I don't want this. I don't want that headache at this point, because this video is getting long. And update TODO ID. If I go here, okay, looks like we're good. All right, let's test it now. And we do the dispatch. I think that should be it, if I'm not wrong. All right, let's test it. So I'm going to refresh, and let's edit this third TODO. It populated the field correctly. Now I'm going to say third TODO updated from UI. There you go. We call this put method, and we updated the change, and it displayed on the real time on the UI. So now if we refresh this again, we should still get that same data because that's the data that we expect. And now if we add fifth to do from Y, it's gonna add it real time. So now we can delete the to-dos, we can update the to-dos. As you can see, it updated that one. We can add new to-dos, and we have the ability to get the to-dos. So that is all of the CRUD functionality done. So I think only thing left to do is the one small change that I wanted to do. We're not using reset, so what we want to do is every time we get out of this component, or when the unmounting happens, we will need to reset our state. So what I will do is go to this return statement and just dispatch and call that reset. And we're gonna have to add that reset, I think, as a dependency. Or maybe not. Oh, it's gonna create problems. Let's not do that. Yep, I think that should be good enough. So every time we go to the different pages, it's just gonna reset the state for us so that we have a cleaner state. I think that's pretty much it, guys, in terms of what we need. So now on this episode, right, we managed to have complete CRUD functionality on our to-dos. So I think on this series, the only thing left to do is actually deploy the changes and test it out on the actual URL rather than on the local host. So this was really cool project for me, guys, to create the videos on. So I hope you guys had got some sort of values out of it as well. And I think on the next episode we will work on deployment. And if you guys find this kind of videos helpful, please give a thumbs up to the video and subscribe to the channel so that you guys don't miss out any future uploads. And I think I will catch you guys on the next video. Thanks.